Looking for support, advice, and inspiration from moms just like you? Welcome to Mom Talks, where we delve deep into the struggles, messiness, and beauty of real #mom life. Here's your host, fellow mama and health and fitness expert, Sarah Denton.
Hello, welcome to Mom Talks, here with Sarah Denton. I'm also here today with our fellow mom, Jeanette Lehmann. She has two incredible kids. She also has Brainchild Creations Academy. Is it Academy, Jenny? I want to make sure.
Brainchild Creations Community Academy.
Community Academy. That is a mouthful.
I know. I'm big into titles.
I love it. No, it's perfect. I love it. And so does my daughter, Lily. She absolutely adores it. And so we will definitely be learning a lot more about that as we go further on. So let me just go ahead and start. This is going to be our first podcast and first mom interview. So thank you so very much. I was having some technical issues a little while ago, and you were so patient and kind, and I do appreciate it. And as I appreciate you just volunteering to be part of this podcast,
it makes so welcome.
Yeah. It makes a huge difference. Moms out there, it wasn't until after I had children that I realized how lonely I was and how isolated I felt. And then after meeting other moms, realizing how many similarities we actually had. So I thought it would just be a wonderful idea to bring moms together and help support and uplift each other and share stories. And especially, we've talked a couple of times now, and after talking to you, your story is just truly remarkable. And I am thrilled and so excited to have you share that.
Thanks so much. I'm excited too. Thanks for letting me be your first guest. I'm so excited and honored.
Me too. Me too. So I ask my ladies what they would like the title of their podcast to be. So let's just get into this, because this just happened and it was so entertaining and just so cute. So what did you choose as your title, Jenny?
I chose a line from one of my favorite poems, and the line is, "As sponges, buckets do." And it's from an Emily Dickinson poem I adore.
Okay.
Called "The Brain is Wider Than the Sky."
Wow.
Like wide width.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with it my freshman year in college. I wanted to drop majoring in graphic design or anything else and just focus on Emily Dickinson, her poetry, for a while. And my parents wouldn't let me do that. But this one just stuck with me. It has for 20 years now. And I'm sure if any of my friends that have known me a long time listen to this, they'll be like, "Oh,
that's Jenny."
how different. Jenny's talking about that poem." But it talks about how everything that exists kind of exists in our head, because if we won't, if we don't allow it to exist in our head, it doesn't, kind of thing. In so many ways. But in the second stanza, it says, "The brain is deeper than the sea, for hold them blue to blue. The one the other will absorb, as sponges buckets do." And I feel like
it's very fitting. And it's very fitting for you being an educator, that it just fits you perfectly.
Thanks. I think I focused on the first stanza for the first 20 years of knowing this poem. And it's just recently that it's it's the second stanza. Maybe that's where I'm at in life now, where it's now that my kids are both 4 for the next month and a half, they're little sponges, and
yes,
they're kind of like sponges, and they absorb everything. And then when they're squeezed a little bit, with stress or emotions, that all of it comes out just in the way that if you've cleaned up your bathroom floor and then you squeeze out that sponge into your tub, you see all of that gook.
Yeah.
We are at that phase now where sometimes my kids are absorbing lots And that's great. But once in a while, the things that come out of them,
Yes,
out of their little mouths,
out.
are very disturbing to me, especially when I know that, like, oh, that definitely came from me. That's exactly how I would have said that in that situation.
Yeah.
And it wasn't appropriate.
Yes. You realize that's when you see all of your faults in your own personality is whenever you like have kids.
Yes, absolutely.
That's where that came from.
Yep.
But it also gives you a chance to learn and grow because they will still learn and grow from you.
Right.
And I think that that's a beautiful title. And especially now that you explained it, when you first told me, I was like, oh, that's so cute. And just now, though, you explaining it and reading that second stanza, it makes perfect sense, especially just after talking to you and getting to know you a little bit better. Yeah, it's great. And I definitely want to talk more about Brainchild Creations. But before that, I just want to talk about you, Jenny.
Okay. Yeah.
There's so much more to you. I mean, being a mom is obviously one of the most important jobs that anyone is ever blessed with. But there was a Jenny before kids. So tell me just a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, let's see. I recently turned 40. That's a big deal for me. I don't know why. So I feel like I start every conversation with that. Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm 40. But I'm kind of loving it. But before that, I grew up in Spencer County, Indiana, so not far from Evansville. Like keep going east from Newburgh and you'll run into it. Actually started out in Dale, so in North Spencer, and it was a pretty tumultuous life for my family at the time. My mom and dad got a divorce when I was 3. But then got remarried when I was 4. So a lot of that I don't necessarily remember. Right. What I do remember is that we had a season pass to Holiday World and we lived 10 minutes away. So we went a lot.
Yeah, that's a good memory.
Yeah. And my mom who was a nurse, had stopped working as a nurse for a while. And there used to be, when Holiday World was Santa Claus Land, when I was a little kid, there were these little, sort of old fashioned stores, like almost like general stores in a strip, across the street from Santa Claus Land. And my mom worked at one of those and I went to work with her and sat behind the counter or talked to people when they came in, and it was just full of odd little knickknacks, and it had a wall of cuckoo clocks, and that's how I learned to tell time.
That's great.
So despite being this very tumultuous time that I think my brother, who's 4 years older than me, clearly remembers, I remember a lot of the really fun, magical parts of that instead. After that, when my parents got back together, we lived on our family farm for a little bit in Chrisney, and that was super fun. And then eventually we moved to Richland, so into South Spencer, and my mom still lives in that house. And, my dad recently passed away, and now I own that little farmhouse in Chrisney.
Oh.
And let's see, elementary school was okay. I was really creative, but my brother he was 4 years ahead of me in school, and he was like the straight A student from kindergarten to college graduation. So there was a lot of unwanted competition there.
Yeah.
And like my mom purposely had us far enough apart that we wouldn't be compared in school the way that she and her sister, who were like 16 months apart, that they were always compared, but it didn't matter. We were still compared. Yeah. And like creativity is great to teachers, but not as great as academics. So that was a little weird. Middle school was awful because middle school girls kind of stuff.
Hormones start.
And I was awful too. Like it wasn't like everybody was awful to me. We were all awful to each other. And sometimes it was great. Not the awful parts, but other times it was wonderful. Let's see. And then high school was a mixed bag. I mean, I think I was class president my sophomore year because I kind of ran for it as a joke. And gave some ridiculous, like almost like a stand-up comedy special as my election speech, and I won.
I love it.
So that
Hey,
was fun.
I would vote for you too. Like after getting to know you, I'd be like, yes.
Thanks. But I was involved in everything, but athletics, and even that, I still stayed involved, but like as a basketball manager for the girls team, because I've never been athletic. Well, I've never been coordinated enough to be good at athletics.
Right.
You know, so like had they had something like, I don't know, if they had a athletic program where you didn't have to be coordinated and have depth perception, I would have been great.
Right.
But I wouldn't have. I never made it past conditioning before I was like, can I just be the manager? I want to hang out with these people, but I don't want to run.
Everybody has their different gifts and they have managers for a reason.
Yes. Yeah. But I was in show choir and all the plays and musicals, and I was editor of the yearbook and stayed pretty involved in a lot of stuff, which is like completely possible in a small school because like they need kids to fill in lots of spaces and a lot of times it's the same kids. So that was great. I had one teacher, my speech, English, journalism teacher that I feel like in a lot of ways like saved my life through like those dark times in high school. She was just there. She listened to me. She seemed to trust me probably at times when she shouldn't have with, you know, like the master key to her room or with, I don't know, like gobs of cash from selling yearbooks. And in a time where, I don't know, I was really searching for things and it's like, here's this, I trust you. And I'd be like, me? You trust me?
Right.
Thanks. I'll take this directly to the office because I don't want to disappoint you. Yeah. So that was pretty good. I started dating right as I turned 16 and had never dated before really. And definitely got, I don't know, like became obsessed with it in kind of making a situation work that wasn't, you know, like I'm going to like this guy and he's going to like me. And we're desperate to be liked by someone. So we're going to make this work.
Forcing it to happen just so that it happens.
Right. Yeah. Yep. So it was fine. First boyfriend. And then my second boyfriend, we dated so I guess the first one we dated for about 8 months or something, pretty significant. But not necessarily like the heartbreaking breakup. It was like, yeah, we don't really like each other that much. But my second boyfriend, we dated through the rest of my high school. He was already in college. So he was just 2 years ahead of me. And then we dated all the way through college at Purdue together. And then we got married and we're married for, I think like 5 to 6 years, before I kind of realized like, okay, I'm not in high school anymore. Right. And I think
people grow.
I think when,
people change.
Yeah,
they do.
And my mom and dad had split up I think after my freshman year of high school, that summer in between freshman and sophomore year, but they didn't actually get divorced until my senior year of college. They just lived separately and kind of coexisted. But in doing that, there was never any question of custody. It was just, of course, I was going to live with mom. That's who I would have chosen. But there was never like a forced visitation and like, you may be mad at your dad, but you've got to spend every Wednesday and every other weekend with him.
Right.
And because of that, I mean, and he knew I was mad at him, so he didn't ask and I wouldn't have wanted to go. But because he didn't ask, I also probably felt like he didn't want me there.
Yeah, which is understandable as a child. Sure.
Yeah. And I would think it would have been great for us to have had those weekends, whatever, together. I think we would have worked out a lot of anger, hopefully, but who knows? It may have made things worse. I'm not sure. But my ex-husband, he was like the guy in high school that he drove a Suburban. He was the designated driver for every party for everyone. Wow. And he made sure everybody got home safe. And he was just a really good, stable kind of guy. He worked really hard. He always had jobs, multiple jobs, and he saved his money and would take me to nice dinners. Like, not like it was just for the food, but he was very mature for high school guys and even for college guys. So I don't think it was until I turned about 25, 26 that I kind of realized I think I had been not using him for money. I mean, that does cloud things when people give you nice gifts all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think more for like a father figure, or, the
Okay.
same time my dad left, my
Stability.
brother had graduated from high school and moved to college. So I think I was replacing those male figures in my life with him.
Sure.
And,
Right.
it sounds creepy, I guess,
No.
but I think a lot of us do that.
We absolutely do. Anytime that we have especially a parent, but any type of significant relationship, like as a child that was with an adult and that part is missing, I feel like we all search for that and it kind of manifests itself in different ways. And I think many times that happens in relationships and people that you're drawn to. You needed somebody that was stable and that offered that security and that, okay, this person isn't going to leave. That's important.
Yeah.
I can absolutely see why that would, feel crucial, especially as you're moving into womanhood.
Yeah. And I, at the end, like I desperately needed to, I think I was changing in ways that he wasn't. I think he was always what he was, kind of a thing. But, and this is also the guy that I think one of the first times we went out on a date, he was like, oh, you've got to come to my grandparents' house with me. And his grandmother had Parkinson's disease and had it for a few years, I think. I thought we were just going to go visit and, grandma and grandpa might bring out snacks or something the way that grandparents do. But we went and he was like a caregiver for them. And we're 16 and 18 and he's fixing like the week's worth of pudding cups for them. Yeah. Like real boiled pudding.
And definitely. And maturity would be appealing.
Right. And sorting out their pills. And he and his grandpa had this amazing train collection that was just massive, like a museum's worth. And he would dust all of them or sort them. And, it was just incredible. And I thought, my gosh, like this is the man I'll marry. And I did. Right. But things definitely got hard for him after his grandfather died. It had been a few years after his grandmother. And I think when you lose somebody that you're that close to, you just want to hold on to everything they had and touched. And that included a massive train collection that came in our house, in addition to his existing toy collections that I think his grandfather had fostered a love of in him. And I don't know, eventually it felt like there's not room for me here and I don't really want to be here anyway. And in the way of, you said earlier, like that I was thinking, oh, this guy's not going to leave. It became a bad thing for me where it was like, no matter what I do, he's not going to leave. I'm going to have to leave. Yeah. I don't want to be here anyway. And it was just a heartbreaking realization in that like, man, we should have just been friends. We should have just stayed friends. Or friends with benefits, if that had been a thing, then whatever. It would have been better than, I think, putting each other through the, pressure cooker or whatever that marriage is when it's just not working. I don't know.
Right. So then basically after that relationship, I know that you're married now and you have 2 beautiful babies. So tell me a little bit about that and about your pregnancies and if you had any issues or if you had. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So Kyle and I met, I don't know, pretty soon after I had moved out, lived alone for several months. And I know we knew each other by the time that like the divorce was final, but I had been out of the house for a while. So it was one of those complicated things, but we didn't know each other when I left or when I had signed up for the divorce or signed up for it, whatever. Right. But he definitely wasn't the reason I left because I hadn't met him. But somehow in that way, like he was the type of guy I was looking for, like almost down to the look, the attitude, like the humor, everything. So when we did meet, it wasn't love at first sight because the first night we met, we didn't like each other at all. But I think the second night we left was when we're like, okay, let's just go get married someday. And we dated for not long before we moved into an apartment together. It was like a loft apartment downtown in Evansville. And for a first apartment with a couple, it was just one room with a bathroom, and the bathroom had a glass door.
Oh, so you were very, very familiar.
Right, yeah. Yes, but it was on like Main Street and 3rd, so Hammerheads was still there, so we could like walk out our door and then down 2 buildings, and we could be at Hammerheads, or we could walk down to the Peephole, or it was great for because my ex-husband was such a like teetotaler, he didn't drink or do anything like that. I missed all of that voluntarily through almost all of the end of high school and college. So this was kind of my late adolescence again, except I was 26 and I had a steady job as a teacher at a public school. So I had to be careful. I wasn't about to like go drinking and driving or anything like that. So it was nice to be able to, you know, go out and then just walk a couple blocks home and be safe. So that was great. And then we decided, okay, this is fantastic. Let's make it more fantastic and move to a new place. And at least for me, Kyle lived kind of all over in several states. And we decided to move to Charlotte, North Carolina. He had lived there before. And
love Charlotte.
Yeah, and it's beautiful there. It's just a beautiful city. I got a teaching job there at a teaching expo, which in the big cities they have. So there are these big hiring events where they have to hire like 2,000 teachers for the next school year, but all in one day. So I'm super nervous about going to this thing, like really, really nervous. And I get a job at International Baccalaureate Middle School within like the first 15 minutes. And I'm like, oh, I'm so awesome. Yeah. Super proud of myself. Dream job.
Enjoying the show? Become a patron and receive access to exclusive content and additional episodes. Visit Mom Talks Patron page today and help make motherhood matter.
Yeah, so that was great. Turns out, and I'm sure people from Charlotte Mecklenburg schools might be angered by this, but I think when you have to hire 2,000 teachers in a day, you're kind of desperate.
But it doesn't mean you weren't qualified.
Not that I couldn't teach, but I grew up in Richland, Dale, Chrisney, Indiana. I went to South Spencer, then I went to Purdue, came home and got my master's at Oakland City. And then I'd only ever worked at South Spencer Middle School, South Spencer High School, and Wrights, FJ Wrights in Evansville. And now I'm teaching at an inner city magnet school in Charlotte. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to have any problem with this. I've watched Dangerous Minds a lot.
You were a professional.
Right. Yeah. I was going to go in and be, Michelle Pfeiffer. And it's middle school. I thought middle school would be easy. I had student taught middle school and I had been a middle school librarian, but I hadn't taught middle school full time. But I thought, well, it'll be easier than high schoolers because they're 11 and 12, right? And that backfired a lot because 11 and 12-year-olds say everything that a high schooler can say. And they can be really fearless about it and, say really pretty hateful things when they want to. But they're also still at the point of if you snap back at them, even without using their words, without swearing, whatever, they'll still cry.
Really?
So,
well, see, now you're teaching us things. Now, for that, ladies, for those that have, elementary school age children that are moving up to middle school, they'll start to act like teenagers, but extra sensitive. Bold enough to say those things.
Yes.
But then turn around and cry about it.
Right.
Wow. Yay. Thanks, Jenny. I'm looking forward to that now.
It's super fun. But part of it was just great. Like it wasn't I don't ever want it to be like, oh, it was a race thing or anything like that. Because I remember saying, like, probably within my first week, like, I don't want to teach just all white kids again. Like, this is awesome. Like, these kids are so funny. And, I just like these city kids, like, they know so much more that, like, I didn't know until I was in college, like, kind of things about life, different things. I just really loved a lot of it. But and Charlotte, or North Carolina doesn't have a teachers union, and people can feel however they want about unions, but like teachers really need it to protect teachers so that they're okay. Because if your teachers aren't okay, they're probably not okay enough to be in front of kids all day and not just exude, I don't want to be here. I'm cracking, that kind of thing. And there was so much paperwork and pressure, and you had I was used to having a copy machine in our workroom just for the English department. So you couldn't run as many copies as you wanted, but you still had access to run a couple copies if you wanted to. And this was one little copy machine that we all stood in line for. And if you left your ream of paper in the copy machine, somebody else was going to use it. And you only got one provided by the school for each grading period. So it was very limiting in that way. And
that goes to say, like, teachers are so important. And that's just proof right there how this could be a whole topic in itself, so we won't spend too much time right this moment on it, but how undervalued and underpaid or without the supplies that you need to function, because teachers are humans too, and they have their breaking points as well, and they're dealing with all of these little minds that, we wouldn't, like, for those that are not teachers, would not be able to have the patience for. But then these other people, we're blessed to have the teachers that we are. It's just a shame. That's a shame.
It is. It really is. And but I was definitely, I think, starting to crack a little under the pressure. Plus, we were in like a very test heavy year, because our school was a magnet school where kids got kind of pulled from their home schools that were underperforming within the city, and they got to come to this school because they had tested well. Well, a lot of the kids didn't want to be at this new school. They wanted to be with their friends, and they knew that the reason that they got there was because they tested well. So the likelihood that I was going to get these kids to test well again was really hard, because they didn't all want to be there. So I was starting to kind of crack under the paperwork pressure. And then, and I giggled there, but it's not a funny thing, but nervous giggler. I had this 7th grade student come to me and tell me that she was afraid to go home because her dad had gotten really angry at her that morning, I believe, or maybe the night before, and was throwing things at her. And he didn't ever hit her with anything or actually hit her, but he was like throwing flip-flops at her, which sounds silly, right? Like, how much damage is a flip-flop going to do? But it's not the flip-flop. It's that she's having angry things thrown at her out of rage. And I knew this kind of rage because I grew up with that from my dad. Like, he never hit us, but I remember thinking, well, I wish he would, because then I would have a bruise or something and I could tell somebody, because nobody's going to do anything about, well, so-and-so, or, my dad threw my spelling book at me or something like that. And it just kind of unlocked memories, everything else. And when I told the counselor, because she couldn't even like keep it together in class at all, she's just fallen to pieces. So I tell the counselor, and I kind of tell her the whole situation. And then at the end of the day, she comes back to get her stuff, because she's been in the office, I guess, with the counselors most of the day. And she comes back to get her bag. And I'm like, so what did they decide? And she's like, I don't know. My dad's coming to pick me up now, and they've told him how upset I am. And now I'm sure he's going to be really mad.
Petrified.
He's picking me up from school.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just like, what? I should have just kept my mouth shut, because now I don't know. It's just that impossible situation as a teacher sometimes when you can't take them home with you. And not that I would have necessarily provided a great home, but you have that feeling of, I just want to protect this kid and I can't. And I see pictures of her on Facebook now. She seems to have a lovely life. But shortly after that, I remember my brother calling to tell me my dad and grandma had gotten in another like epic fight, which was common. That's like, well, it's a Tuesday. My dad and grandma grew up more as brother and sister. So they were just a constant quarreling couple. And like, they always fought huge fights. But this one was different. And I had talked to my, okay, they're both dead now, so I'm just going to let it. So my grandma always loved animals more than people. And my dad had a dog out at the family farm, which was 5 minutes away from her house. And all day long, she would come out and give the dog canned dog food outside in like the middle of August or in Indiana. So it just attracted a lot of flies. And a dog doesn't necessarily need 3 cans a day. So a lot of it just would sit and gather flies. And my dad had told her repeatedly, like, don't do this. We're trying to help the dog lose weight. And he's like way overweight. So don't do this anymore. And I'm sure he did not say it in that nice of a way. And she kept doing it. And when she came out I guess, for like a barbecue or something with some of their mutual friends. My dad saw this bowl of festering dog food covered in flies and asks my grandma to lean down and look at it. And when she does, he dumps it on her head.
Oh, no.
And he thought it was funny. And when I called my grandma, she cried and sobbed and said, you know, it was in front of everybody and he used that awful F word and it was in my bra. And when I call him, he's telling it like it's the best practical. But those two things happened, like the little girl scared to go home because her dad. And then this incident with my dad and grandma, those things happened maybe a day apart and it just broke me. And I didn't finish the school year. I quit at the worst possible time economically because Charlotte was kind of, I don't know if it was flooded with people. It was 2008. So there was a lot of economic problems then, and Charlotte's a banking city. So I think it hit that city really, really hard. And Kyle and I couldn't find jobs anywhere. Dollar store, distribution center would have thousands of people in line to wait for 2-minute interviews. So we eventually moved back home. We had just enough money, I think, to rent the U-Haul, but not to put gas in it. Like that was our level. And we moved back home to Chrisney, where my grandma had some rental trailers, and we got to live in one for free. Not the loveliest point in our life, but
and that's what matters most.
Yeah. And that's kind of how the next, I say 9 years would go. Like it would go really good. Things are great. And then about the time that we were comfortable, then the bottom would fall out and something would happen, or we'd move again and think it was a good move and it wouldn't be. But we were, like, no matter what, we still had to be together. So that was kind of great. Like where even
makes you
even
strong.
at our worst, we still knew we still
That's
had to be
amazing
together.
because that's what, they talk about the 5 things, the 5 major life stressors, and money and moving are 2 of those, especially when it comes to marriage. So if you can get through that and still be a team, I mean, the odds are in your favor for sure. That's fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and then we got the third one, health. That's the other big one that they talk about. So I had developed migraines when I was in 4th grade that kind of mimicked a stroke, but I stopped having them when I was 16 and had never had them in all the time that Kyle and I had lived together, moved around, and we'd been together at this point, I think like 5 or 6 years. Well, maybe not, maybe 3. It seemed like a long time because we moved around so much, but he didn't know about them at all. And one night I'm like drinking tea or coffee late in the evening because I'm grading papers, and it all just comes out the side of my mouth, and I'm trying to tell him that I've burnt myself and all my words are coming out wrong, and he thinks, oh my God, she's having a stroke. And he calls my mom and she's like, no, it's a migraine, give her a Tylenol, she'll throw up about 10 minutes later and be fine. She'll just need to sleep in a dark room and like be really quiet. We talked about this a little bit. Those are the same type of migraines that I had. So if anybody listening has those, they are real. And you go numb. They are real. They're scary.
You can't find your speech. It's hard for you to see. And what are those? You told me the name of those. What are those called?
Sometimes they'll call them complicated migraines. If you have the numbness on one side, but the headache on the other side, they'll call it hemiplegic. Like hemisphere. And but they're scary, and they're scary for people to see that don't know. So I used to carry around like one of those medical bracelets that had like a little thing inside that you could unfold and be like, it's a migraine. But I don't think anybody would ever actually unfold it. I think they just think, oh, this person's having a stroke. They have a medical bracelet, call the ambulance. And you can only afford that so many times. So it's difficult. We don't go to the ER or anything for those anymore, but they just started happening again. And it didn't happen for a while. And then like the week after we got engaged while I was on spring break. I was teaching at Henderson County High School, having a great school year. Like it was stressful, but like I had honors classes finally. I also had reading classes, like actually teaching high schoolers that are struggling with reading, like reading words, working with them. And we had finally developed a good relationship. So it was really getting to a pretty good point in the school year, minus teacher stress, paperwork stress. But otherwise it was pretty good. And we just got engaged, and I had just gotten a haircut that I actually liked and some new clothes and because it had been my birthday. And so I got new clothes. So it's just that, one of those things where it's like, it's spring, I'm feeling good. I got some sleep. And then it all came crashing where I almost like that kind of migraine, but over a week.
An entire week.
And I couldn't concentrate in class, and I'm the teacher. And it just eventually got to a point where I, again, mid-school year, just broke. But this time it wasn't emotional. It was neurological. It was, it was in my head, but not in just my mind, I guess. And so I spent a week, I think, in the neuro ICU in Evansville, and then was transferred to IU Medical Center in Indy because I was having a lot of physical problems as a result. Finally got out of there, had kind of a euphoric summer after that because Kyle and I decided to get married after I got out of the hospital in like a month. So I think we planned this big wedding in maybe a month and a half, but it was really short. And it was a beautiful wedding in Louisville, like this Whitehall, like old mansion out in a garden. It's very Alice in Wonderland. All of these things I hear. I was on so many medications then, anti-seizure medications, that I don't know that I really ever needed, but that's what the doctors prescribed. So my short-term memory was just garbage.
During one of the most important times of
my tone of voice, right? I was like, look at those pictures. Was that me? That sort of thing. And I was apparently a bridezilla like crazy to my friends and family. And it's hard for me to really think that I did that, but I think part of it was on this medication, my tone of voice didn't have inflections. And with my friends, especially, I'm really sarcastic. And you can't be sarcastic.
Right. Nobody knows if you're serious or not. Right.
With a monotone
voice. It doesn't
voice.
Sound like a joke. It just sounds like you're being mean.
Yeah, because it just sounds like I'm dead
like, man, Jenny, that was harsh.
Yeah. So I think that was a part of it. I had no concept of time, like 5 minutes, 5 hours, no different. And I couldn't stop having ideas long enough to complete one. So I think it was like 5 minutes before walking down the aisle and I'm still like, oh, the programs, here they are. Can everybody put rubber bands on these? That kind of thing. So yeah, it was chaotic. And then after that, we went on our honeymoon, and the next week I went back to teaching, still in that state of mind, super creative, super heightened creative, and all my senses were heightened. It was crazy. I could tell when halogen light bulbs were going to go out.
What?
At school, like I could walk into somebody's room and be like, oh, that light bulb's going to go out. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's not even blinking. And I'm like, I don't know. I can hear it and see it a little bit. They'd be like, okay, you're nuts. And then I'd go back to my room, and the next day they'd come in and go, you'll never believe it. That light bulb went out. Yeah. So those meds are crazy. I was losing a lot of weight though, and I had tons of energy. So I thought it was the wonder drug, and everybody else around me was like, I think Jenny's on speed or something. And probably to this day, a lot of people at that school probably think that I stopped teaching because I was on drugs. I don't know. I would have definitely thought that if I was watching me, and I was, but they were on prescription drugs. It's what the doctor told me to take. So I didn't finish that school year either. So after that, I was determined to find out, like, okay, what is wrong with my brain? There has to be something there. At this point, we've done too many MRIs and CT scans that, we can't do more. But we started doing like sleep studies, trying to get into neurologists, which is really hard because you get in, it takes about 3 months to get in. And then when they see you, they say, okay, I'll see you in 6 months. I tried counseling then with stress, and that sort of just exacerbated everything because it did bring up a lot of things. I don't know. It was just super hard. And I didn't work again until, at least work consistently again until Kyle and I started this business. And that was 2010. Thank goodness we had kids.
Well, tell me, because I definitely do want to talk a little bit more about your medical condition and get a little bit deeper into that. We will definitely do that. But I also want to make sure that we talk about Jack and Scout and how they came into this world. And then. Oh, yeah.
I'm bad at short questions.
You're fantastic. Keep talking. I just want to make sure we talk about those babies too. And that way we lead into your Brainchild Creations, because that's amazing what you two have done. So did you, as far as your pregnancies go, do you feel like they were normal? Were you going through these medical issues during your pregnancies, or were they before? How did that kind of play out?
So you can't get pregnant on a lot of seizure medications because I think they cause like really serious birth defects, like spinal type. So I would go off a medication for a while. We'd try to get pregnant, then it wouldn't work, like after, 6 months. Something like that. And then eventually I'd have to go back to the doctor and be like, okay, can we try a different medication? Because now these symptoms are back and it's worse. So, and then we'd kind of just do that loop. And we did it for a few years, maybe 3 or 4 years, honestly. And I don't know because they mess with your concept of time and short-term memory. So I really don't know. But I also stopped working about the time that Netflix started streaming, which is a bad time to not be working. Yeah. Just me at home, just watching, a good 11 hours of TV a day.
Sometimes it's needed.
Yeah, right. I consider like a lot of those shows are like literature now to me. So it was all just, if I said that I read 11 books in a day, I'd feel very, proud of that. So I'm just going to say it was
that's
literature.
How I feel about audiobooks too. I feel the same way.
Yes.
For sure.
Oh, audiobooks for sure. Definitely.
I have not
read a book since Scout was born because I feel like there's always like, I don't know, I can't get my eyes to rest, or maybe there's like one of their bodily fluids, just a bit of it floating in one eye.
And audiobooks allow you to multitask for sure.
Yes. Oh, well, I mean, it's reading the book. It's just
definitely.
Yes. Oh, me too. And especially like if it's a book that I love the story, but I can't handle the narrator or the vocalist or whatever, the voice recorder, then I'll turn it off and I'll go actually get the physical book.
Yes.
Because sometimes there are the audio recordings where I just can't handle the voice. But if it's a really good voice, it just becomes like my favorite.
Definitely.
Yeah. But finally, I think it was a time like after a spurt again when I had gotten on the one medication that I always loved because it made me feel really good about myself. And I didn't feel like I had I didn't have migraines as much, but literally everyone else close to me hated me on it because I don't know, I never slept. I think it was really like speed for me. I mean, I don't know because I've never sought out drugs like that, but it was one that, and I think Kyle finally was like, okay, are you taking this medication again? And it was Topamax, which may be great for some people, but for me, it just didn't bring out the best. Yeah. Or it brought out the best at first and then, it made it really awful. And these are like my closest friends, like friends I have had before I got sick and had throughout the illness and still. And
definitely
that's some friendship, like those people. But anyway, he was finally like, you can't be on this anymore. Like, I really don't think there's much that'll like ruin our marriage, but that medication will. So you can't do that anymore. And I think after that, it was like, okay, then I don't want to take any of it. Let's just focus on getting pregnant. And it didn't happen and didn't happen and didn't happen. And I just remember the last Christmas before we had Jack thinking, okay, we're going to have to figure out how to do Christmas for the rest of our lives without kids. And this is like everybody's starting to do the elf on the shelf stuff. And now Facebook has exploded and become the mom thing. And we're not going to ever have kids. And we want them, but we're not going to be able to have them. And I don't think we're strong enough to adopt or foster. We couldn't adopt because we were so broke from crazy medical debt. So it was just incredibly sad.
Thank you for listening to Mom Talks. Your support is invaluable, so please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. For even more extras and bonus content, be sure to visit Mom Talks Patron page.